Today, we are going to discuss the Indian nationalism. Indian nationalism was shaped by a series of historical events that fueled the struggle for independence. Here are 5 key events that contributed to its rise. First is the Revolt of 1857, First War of Independence. Also known as the Sepoy Mutiny, this was the first large-scale resistance against British rule. Though it was suppressed, it planted the seeds of national consciousness. Second is the formation of the Indian National Congress, 1885. The INC was established to advocate for Indian representation in governance. Over time, it became a key platform for nationalist movements. Third is the Partition of Bengal, 1905. The British divided Bengal along religious lines, sparking widespread protests and the Swadeshi movement, which encouraged self-reliance and the boycott of British goods. Fourth is the Jallianwala Bagh, or the Amritsar Massacre, 919. British troops under General Dyer fired upon unarmed civilians, killing hundreds. This brutal act outraged Indians and intensified the demand for independence. Fifth is the non-cooperation movement, 1920 to 1922. Led by Mahatma Gandhi, this movement encouraged Indians to withdraw from British institutions, promote Swadeshi goods, and resist colonial rule nonviolently. Mahatma Gandhi played a pivotal role in India's struggle for independence through his advocacy of nonviolent resistance. Gandhi's methods, inspired by his deeply religious approach to political activity, blended ideas from major world religions like Hinduism, Islam, and Christianity. Gandhi's strategy included civil disobedience and non-cooperation with the British government. One of his most famous campaigns was the Salt March, where thousands of Indians marched to the sea to make salt from seawater, defying the British salt tax. This peaceful protest garnered international attention and support for the Indian independence movement. The British salt tax made salt expensive and banned Indians from producing it, harming the poor. It became a symbol of oppression, leading to Gandhi's Salt March, 1930, which strengthened Indian nationalism and the civil disobedience movement against British rule. On March 12, 1930, Gandhi and his followers embarked on a 240-mile journey from Sabarmati Ashram to the coastal village of Dandi to protest the British monopoly on salt. The march, which lasted 24 days, symbolized India's defiance against oppressive colonial laws and marked the beginning of the broader civil disobedience movement. By making salt from seawater, Gandhi openly violated British laws. The civil disobedience movement, following the Salt March, saw widespread participation from various groups who refused to pay taxes, boycotted British goods, and held mass protests. The British responded with harsh repression, arresting thousands, including Gandhi. Despite this, the movement intensified nationalist sentiments, showcased nonviolent resistance, and drew global attention to India's independence struggle. Though eventually losing momentum due to government crackdowns and internal disagreements, the movement weakened British control and proved the power of mass nonviolent protest. It led to negotiations, resulting in the Gandhi-Irwin Pact of 1931, which secured the release of political prisoners and allowed peaceful protests. Ultimately, it strengthened the call for independence and shaped future resistance strategies. Gandhi's adoption of the spinning wheel as a symbol of resistance further emphasized the importance of self-sufficiency and indigenous industries. His teachings attracted millions of followers who began calling him the Mahatma, or Great Soul. Gandhi's leadership and nonviolent resistance were instrumental in gradually gaining political power for Indians, leading to the eventual passage of the Government of India Act in 1935, which provided limited self-governance. Another cause of Indian nationalism is the Partition of Bengal in 1905. Lord Curzon, the Viceroy of India, divided Bengal into 2 parts, ostensibly to improve administrative efficiency, but this move was seen as an attempt to weaken the growing nationalist sentiment in Bengal. Bengalis, who were predominantly Hindu, felt that the partition would reduce their influence by placing them under different administrative units. This decision sparked widespread outrage and protests across Bengal, leading to the Swadeshi movement. The Swadeshi movement urged the boycott of British goods and promoted indigenous industries, finance, and education. It boosted Indian manufacturing, led to a cultural revival, and inspired the establishment of national institutions like Banaras Hindu University. The movement, sparked by the partition of Bengal, strengthened Indian nationalism and inspired similar movements nationwide. The Lucknow Pact of 1916 was a key event in Indian nationalism, uniting the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League in the fight for independence. Negotiated by leaders like Jinnah and Tilak, it marked a rare moment of Hindu-Muslim cooperation. The pact proposed joint electoral reforms and greater Muslim representation, seen as a step towards self-rule for India. The Lucknow Pact was significant for demonstrating Hindu-Muslim unity against British rule. Though short-lived due to later political and communal tensions, it symbolized the potential for interfaith cooperation in Indian nationalism. The pact's focus on electoral reforms and representation highlighted India's growing demand for political participation and the need for unity in the struggle for independence. However, the Lucknow Pact ultimately failed to sustain long-term Hindu-Muslim unity. The subsequent rise of communal tensions and the eventual partition of India in 1947 highlighted the challenges of maintaining interfaith cooperation in the face of political pressures. Meanwhile, the Rowlatt Act of 919 was a harsh law that allowed imprisonment without trial for up to 2 years. It was widely opposed, especially by the Western-educated elite, who saw it as a violation of individual rights. Intended to suppress nationalism, the act instead sparked widespread protests and intensified resistance against British rule. The Jallianwala Bagh massacre in April 919 was a brutal British response to protests against the Rowlatt Act. Thousands of unarmed Indians gathered in Amritsar when British troops opened fire without warning, killing hundreds. This massacre became a turning point in Indian nationalism, intensifying opposition to British rule and fueling the independence movement. Also, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre marked a shift from passive acceptance of British rule to active resistance. It also propelled Gandhi to national leadership, advocating nonviolent resistance. Along with the Rowlatt Act, the massacre exposed British brutality, but it ultimately strengthened India's resolve for independence. On the other hand, the Khilafat movement was a Muslim nationalist movement in India opposing the dismantling of the Ottoman Empire after World War I. Led by the Ali brothers and Maulana Azad, it aimed to protect the caliphate and promote Muslim rights. It gained widespread support and formed an alliance with the Indian National Congress, with Gandhi backing it to unite Hindus and Muslims against British rule. However, the movement failed as the Ottoman Caliphate was abolished in 1924. To pacify the Indians, the Government of India Act of 1935 was passed. It was a key step towards self-governance, introduced by the British to expand Indian participation in administration. It established a federal system, granting provinces more autonomy while keeping British control over defense and foreign affairs. The proposed All India Federation was never fully implemented due to opposition from princely states. A major feature of the act was provincial autonomy, allowing Indian ministers to govern certain areas without British interference. Elections in 1937 led to Congress-led governments in many provinces, though the Governor-General retained overriding powers. Despite its limitations, the act marked a transition toward greater Indian political influence. While it did not grant full independence, the act shaped India's political landscape and strengthened demands for self-rule. Nationalist leaders viewed it as incomplete, but used it to demonstrate governance capabilities. Its shortcomings fueled the call for complete independence, contributing to the Quit India movement in 1942. The Quit India movement, launched by Mahatma Gandhi on August 8, 1942, demanded an immediate end to British rule. In his Do or Die speech, Gandhi urged nonviolent resistance through civil disobedience, protests, and strikes. The British responded with repression, arresting leaders, censoring the press, and using force. Despite the crackdown, Indians staged demonstrations and sabotaged infrastructure. Though suppressed by 1944, the movement weakened British control and proved India's resolve for freedom, leading to independence on August 15, 1947. Finally, India gained independence on August 15, 1947, after decades of nationalist struggles led by Gandhi, Nehru, and Bose. Weakened by World War II, Britain proposed self-governance in 1946, but communal tensions led to partition. Nehru's Tryst with Destiny speech marked independence, though it came with violence and displacement. Despite challenges, India adopted a democratic constitution in 1950, becoming the world's largest democracy. Thank you very much.